من لاله آزادم، خود رویم و خود بویم، در دشت مکان دارم، هم فطرت هایم. من لاله آزادم، خود رویم و خود بویم، در دشت مکان دارم، هم فطرت هایم. خوابم نم باران است، فارغ ز لب جویم، تنگ است محیط آنجا، در باغ نمی رویم. من لاله آزادم، خود رویم و خود بویم، در دشت مکان دارم، هم فطرت هایم. از خون رگ خویش است گر رنگ بر رخ دارم، مشاطه نمیخواهم، زیبایی رخسارم بر ساقه خود ثابت، فارغ ز مددگارم، نی در طلب یارم، نی در غم اغیارم. من لاله آزادم، خود رویم و خود بویم، در دشت مکان دارم، هم فطرت هایم. جوش می و مستی بین در چهره گلگونم، داغ است نشانش در سینه پرخونم، آزاده و سرمستم، خو کرده بهامونم، رانده است جنون عشق از شر به افسونم. من لاله آزادم، خود رویم و خود بویم، در دشت مکان دارم، هم فطرت هایم. خوابم نم باران است، فارغ ز لب جویم، تنگ است محیط آنجا، در باغ نمی رویم. من لاله آزادم، خود رویم و خود بویم، در دشت مکان دارم، هم فطرت هایم.
where we're never alone. The love you create, the light from your face, brings us together, brings us home. You pave the way, save the day, keep us from going astray, inspire us to follow the way. Today we celebrate. Beloved Imam, thank you for all that you've done. As one Jamaat we unite, because you guide the way. Your benevolent grace, radiant smile on your face. As one Jamaat we have strength, because you guide the way. Inner tranquility, you say, is the key. That's why we close our eyes and pray. Gratitude for everything is to be our state. Don't take for granted eternity. This life is but a ray in time and space. You say honor everybody, 'cause we'll all return to the same place. You pave the way, save the day, keep us from going astray, inspire us to follow the way. Today we celebrate. Beloved Imam, thank you for all that you've done. As one Jamaat we unite, because you guide the way. Your benevolent grace, radiant smile on your face. As one Jamaat we have strength, because you guide the way. The world sees your accolades, and we see your heart and your noor. You live your life to make the world a better place, and encourage us to do the same. Beloved Imam, thank you for all that you've done. As one Jamaat we unite, because you guide the way. Your benevolent grace, radiant smile on your face. As one Jamaat we have strength, because you
या मौला मेरे मौला अली मौला, या मौला मेरे मौला अली मौला, या मौला कर दे करम की इंतहा मौला, या मौला कर दे करम की इंतहा मौला, या मौला मेरे मौला अली मौला, या मौला मेरे मौला अली मौला। तेरा करम मौला मौला मौला। नूर से तेरे है रोशन ये जहां गुन तेरे गाए ज़मीनों आसमां नूर से तेरे है रोशन ये जहां गुन तेरे गाए ज़मीनों आसमां और जलालत है तेरी सब पे अयां और जलालत है तेरी सब पे अयां या मौला मेरे मौला अली मौला या मौला मेरे मौला अली मौला शिकन मौला अली आप हैं बाबुल इल्म मौला अली आप हैं खैबर शिकन मौला अली आपका है नूर हर सूया आपका है नूर हर सूयाली या मौला मेरे मौला अली मौला या मौला मेरे मौला अली मौला
And I have to say that as I look to the future, I have a deep sense of confidence that the Jamaat around the world is finding its position in the various countries, that our institutions are beginning to have an impact on the quality of life and the quality of thought and the quality of governance in the various countries where we are living. And I say to myself, that is due to what? It's due to your wisdom, your knowledge, you're willing to help each other and to have the courage to think past crises, because that ultimately is the nature of what we all have to do is to think past crises and to think as one family, which is what we are. We are one family. Whether the Jamaat comes from Tajikistan or Afghanistan or Syria or East Africa, it is one Jamaat.
Yalimide, bienvenue and welcome. My name is Zara Premji and I welcome you once again to Friday Night Reflections. An absolute honor to be back here hosting again from a bit of a different location in my home in Vancouver. Decided to spice it up a little bit, spending way too much time inside, as I'm sure all of us are. So I decided to give you a bit of a different background. Thank you once again for welcoming me into your home, sitting down with you and your families, virtually of course. And thank you for sticking with us throughout this really difficult time. I'd be lying if I didn't say it's been difficult. I know all of us are experiencing this in various different levels. Just know you're not alone. We are all going through this together. Probably one of the only times globally we are all going through something collectively. So bear in mind, you're not alone. It's an honor to be here with you. I understand it's been difficult in many regions across the nation. We've had Jamaat Khanas closing. We've seen changes in the way we can pray for now. And we've seen changes in the way we can gather, all virtually, of course. Many changes continuously. That's the theme of this year, it seems. But one thing remains constant. We've got our webinars, we've got everything online, we've got Friday Night Reflections, and we are here with you. So thank you for tuning in week after week. It's an absolute honor to be back here with you. I know the question always is, what drink am I going to bring out this time? I've had the bone broth, I've had the chai, but you know, it's been 10 months of a pandemic. I needed to spice it up a little bit, so I got a recommendation to have the cream soda sparkling water, and I decided to try it out. Good idea. So if anyone's looking for a new drink as they're watching Friday Night Reflections and having their chai and cookies, throw in a bit of sparkling water, spice it up a little. It's so great to have you all here and also to have you tuning in with us all the time. Now, while there's been a lot of change going on, we've also seen little glimmers of hope, little moments of joy, of excitement, of something to come in the future to help us through this. And yes, I'm talking about vaccines. We've seen news coverage throughout the country, throughout the entire world, talking about vaccines and those little glimmers of hope. We've read the stories, we've watched them, we've heard them. It's exciting. I know there's a lot of questions though. I am filled with so many questions around it. The headline news is out there, but there's still so many questions that many of us have. So tonight we are going to dig a little bit deeper into those questions, those pressing questions I know many of you have thrown my way, many that I have circulating in my head that I'm looking for an answer for. How will the vaccine be distributed? Who's going to get it first? When is it coming? Is it really coming? What's going on? A lot of questions, and I'm hoping we can provide a little bit more insight for you tonight. Tonight, we have the absolute privilege of welcoming an expert in the field, Dr. Zain Chagla. You may have seen him on various networks. I know I'm often tuning in when I hear that he's going to be on the air because his insight is down to earth, real, but something we can also connect with, and it gives us a little bit of hope. He's got a lengthy resume, so let me see if I can give you a bit of a sneak peek as to who he is. He specializes in internal medicine, tropical medicine, and infectious diseases. He's a consultant physician at St. Joseph's Hospital and Hamilton Health Sciences. He's an assistant professor of medicine at McMaster University. He's got a lengthy resume. And of course, you've probably seen him out there already somewhere on social media or in the media coverage. Zain, thank you so much for being here with us. Now, Soraya Lakhani is a registered psychologist and the director of Yellow Kite Child Psychology, which is an accessible and centrally located private practice in Calgary, Alberta. She's also a media commentator on the subject of childhood and parenting and a regular contributor to Calgary's Child magazine. You may have seen her in the spotlight somewhere in media. She's been answering a lot of questions, providing a lot of insight, and has been a go-to for many of us as we try to navigate our way through the pandemic. She's also written on the subject of psychological impact of COVID-19. Thank you again so much for joining us. It's an absolute privilege to have you here, lending some insight on some really difficult times. So, over the past few weeks, we've seen provinces introduce, of course, new regulations around COVID-19, and the requirements really do vary across the country. Now, if we set aside questions over what the government should be doing and shift the question to what each of us should be doing, at home, at work, what precautions we should be taking, I want to ask you, what are the main things we should be doing to protect one another at this time?
Yeah, I think regardless of what the precautions are going to be in public, we all have a duty in our own lives to make sure that we're minimizing the spread of this virus. So people who come in the household need to be essential, and visitors that are not essential should not be coming in the household. In all of our lives, I think even if those non-essential people are coming in, consider wearing a mask if they're not a part of your direct household. Minimizing the amount of time in outdoor settings that you need to be in out-of-house settings that you need to be. And really, if you're able to work from home, consider working from home. If you do need to go into a workplace, if you're essential, if it's indoors, distancing is hard, wear a mask while you're indoors at the time you're at work. Be cognizant of the time you need to take breaks and really try to make sure you're distancing from people when your masks are off. Consider hand washing aggressively. And then most importantly, if you are showing any signs of COVID-19, get tested as soon as possible such that you protect yourselves and you protect your family at home.
A big question we've often in the last few weeks seen sort of circulating is, I want to ask you, is there a difference for the South Asian community and as well as the Central Asian community as far as the rate of infection as well as the rate of deaths going around?
Yeah, and we're getting data from Canada really establishing this. So in Toronto and Peel region where I live, we're seeing South Asians disproportionately infected as compared to the population. So in Peel region, 30% of the population is South Asian, but 50% of the infections are from South Asians. In Toronto, it's about 10% that are South Asian and 20% of the infections that are South Asian. And good data that's coming out from Canada suggesting that in neighborhoods that are more than a quarter South Asian, the rate of death is a third higher than neighborhoods which are not South Asian. And so we're seeing more and more data coming that not only South Asians are getting infected more than the populations around them, but they're actually dying more than the populations around them, which makes this much more serious a disease for our community.
All right, a difficult question, but one I need you to lend your expertise on. What is this pandemic saying so far as the impact on our collective mental health? Are we seeing a lot more impact on anxiety, more suicide, more depression? Shine a light a bit more on that. And also, I'm curious to know, what do you have to say as far as what we should keep in mind to maintain mentally fit during this time?
I think we certainly are seeing impacts on people's mental health for sure. Right now we're living through a time of heightened stress, of heightened uncertainty. And so those variables can definitely impact how people are functioning from a psychological standpoint, from a mental health perspective. The other piece to keep in mind is that people who are predisposed to certain mental health conditions, to psychiatric illnesses, etc., are more vulnerable as well, as they might lose access to traditional coping mechanisms and outlets. And we certainly are seeing an uptake in use of resources like crisis lines. We know that we're seeing increased instances of family violence as well. So this certainly is a time where people's mental health is being impacted, with certain people who are predisposed likely experiencing even greater impacts. I think one of the biggest things right now that people can think about or focus on is what I like to call spheres of control. So there are a lot of variables right now that that are beyond our control. So part of what we can do is think about, what we do control. What are things we can do for ourselves, for the people we love, that are still, within the scope of what we control. And so part of it is also thinking about what we value, what's important to us. So for example, things like social connections. What are creative ways that we can still remain connected to the people that we love? Whether that's using technology, whether that's trying to create, space in outdoor spaces, but still being together. So I think it's important for people to think about what they can do in the midst of everything that they cannot do. The last thing I would say too on that is practicing a certain amount of self-compassion, I think can be really important. And this is especially true, I think, of people who are trying to balance work and trying to balance children's needs and all of those variables. It can be very easy to put a lot of pressure on ourselves and to expect, that we're going to be able to do all of the things that we normally would expect of ourselves. So I think just being compassionate and understanding that we're all in this together and we are living through very unusual and unprecedented circumstances. We are all doing our best. And so giving ourselves a little bit of grace and compassion and understanding can go a long way towards supporting our, our mental health needs, our emotional needs, etc.
And what impact is the pandemic having on children?
So children, from what we know, really thrive when there is certainty and when there is structure. And right now, the reality is that we don't have those pieces necessarily. There is a lot of uncertainty. The situation that a lot of kids are in is very fluid. It's changing day to day as school systems are responding to everything that's going on. And extracurricular activities are, many of them are canceled or not in place right now. Social outlets are also limited for kids. And so I think there's certainly a sense of a lot of the ways that they're used to life looking, it's just that's not what's going on right now. There's more uncertainty. There's less sort of structure in a lot of ways. And that can be really hard for kids because kids rely on structure and on those boundaries to kind of understand the parameters of their world. The other part of it too is, of course, at-home learning and some of the unique challenges that can stem from that as well, in terms of bringing that educational component into the home. That can be hard for kids, that can be hard for parents as well to adjust to that kind of an arrangement. And so we certainly are seeing the impacts in those ways. I think a lot of this again comes down to spheres of control. So helping kids reflect on, there's a lot we don't control, but what can we control? What are choices that we can make right now that we do have control over in terms of, for younger kids, it can be really simple things around what you wear or what you're eating. And then, as kids get older, just talking about how things like effort and organization around schoolwork, etc., are still things that they can control. So really focusing on those pieces and trying to create structure as much as possible within the scope of everything that's going on around, around everything we don't have, I guess. And then again, that last point around self-compassion, self-care, this is important for kids and for parents to understand that this year is different. We are in this together, but it's not going to look like other years, and it's okay to give ourselves a little bit of breathing room and a little bit of flexibility as well if things feel different, look different, or just aren't as productive maybe as other years have been.
Now, I know you're in Ontario, I'm in BC. Sometimes we try to be rivals and we try to say we're experiencing different things in our world, but right now this virus is uniting us across the nation, across the globe. And what do you want to say as far as sort of that unity you've seen in the midst of all of this chaos?
Yeah, I think the basic principles are still there for every individual. And I think we need to protect our communities. We need to protect our vulnerable. We need to protect our elderly. Our Jamaat is built on the ethics of this. And so we really do need to look at our own lives in terms of how do we protect our communities? How do we protect our elderly? And it really is that public health adherence minimizing that external contact. And when at work, if you have to be at work, really minimizing the risk of spread there. I think we all have a duty to the cities and the communities we live in to really protect those that are at risk from this virus until we finally get through this.
You know, you mentioned that we all have this duty. Your duty is to be out there on that front line. I go back to that question I just asked and I dig a little deeper. I want to know, is there a story that's really stuck with you that you want to share with the Jamaat that might really stick with us during this time?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You know, I work in a bigger city, and there are patients I've seen 5-6 years ago that I remember very vividly for other reasons, and then I see them get COVID-19 and not get good outcomes. And you know, they're lovely people before I get to know them and I get to know their families, and again, they get struck by this illness randomly. They've tried their hardest to protect themselves, but it just takes one person coming into the household or one interaction where they were exposed that really leads to it, and them getting very sick, unfortunately some of them dying. And it's heartbreaking, not only knowing that they did try their best and really that you know, all it took was one event, but also just knowing who they were before all of this and really making a bond with them and then seeing them lose to this disease.
And I just want to note that for families who are going through that grieving process, it is so important to give yourselves time. You know, grief is such a complicated process in any circumstance. And I think right now part of the challenge is that we don't necessarily have the same level of access to that sense of community support that can be such a comfort when grieving the loss of a loved one. And so again, I think it comes down to giving ourselves that grace and that sense of compassion, you know, taking the time we need and understanding that, you know, in the midst of, I think, a lot of the collective grief that we're experiencing as societies, we also need to take time to process our own, you know, our personal grief or familial grief as well.
I can't even imagine what it's like for you, but no, from myself, I think I can speak from the entire Jamaat when I'm saying thank you for what you're doing and for all the experiences that you are going through to make sure we're safe. And you know, speaking of being safe and maybe a little bit of light, what are some of the effective treatments we're hearing about? Are we close to a cure? What's going on there?
Yeah, so we know patients who are hospitalized with COVID-19, we do have better treatments. So the way we provide them oxygen, the way we deal with them in the intensive care unit, we know patients that need oxygen to the patients that need the intensive care unit. Giving them steroids actually does save their lives. It gets them out of hospital better. And we know there are a number of other drugs that are coming out of the pipeline that are showing some progress in either preventing people from getting to hospital or helping people get out of hospital faster. So, you know, the time we bought with the public health measures to study this disease and get treatments, you know, we've made leaps and bounds of gains from February and March when we didn't know how to deal with this properly to now where we have treatments. But with that being said, we still see people dying, and really the treatments have helped with the disease, but they certainly haven't stopped all the deaths needlessly from this disease.
You know, you talk about all of that work that's being put in right now. We've talked a bit about a cure hopefully on its way to us. You know, talk to us a bit about that light at the end of the tunnel. What can we expect next? How hopeful are we that we're going to get a vaccine? What's the word on it? When will it get to Canada? When is it making its way to us here so we can kind of hold on to that in the midst of what we're going through right now?
Yeah, I mean, so as of 3 weeks ago, you know, if you asked me, I would have said, you know, they're in trials. We don't know how it's going to turn out. We're very hopeful. We now have data from final trials that shows not one, not two, three, maybe even 4 potential vaccines that are coming soon. And again, the data looking much better than even some of us would have predicted. We know some of this is being submitted. We're talking about scale-ups and approvals as of mid-December. And there are some promises starting to be put out there that Canadians may receive the first doses by January, which is incredible innovation. There's never been anything like this to date. But even if we get that vaccine out to the most vulnerable and protecting their healthcare workers, we're going to see a lot less damage from this disease. We're going to see a lot less people dying, and certainly a lot more hope in the future that by the end of 2021, we'll be back to some place that's normal.
How do you think this rollout will work? I know the question is, can I get it? Can you get it? Who can get the vaccine first? What is the word so far on how that will work?
Yeah, so there's a federal framework by the federal government that really prioritizes the people at the highest risk of dying first. So those in long-term care facilities, those with cardiac conditions and other conditions that put them at high risk, protecting their healthcare workers, so those going into care facilities, those working on the front lines of healthcare, those who are providing patient care, and then going to people that have very forward-facing jobs that can't work from home. So teachers, police, firemen, people who work in factories, people who work on farms, and then finally moving out to the general population after that. And that process will take some time, but as we start going down more and more of those groups, the fear and the risk of this disease, and hopefully as this vaccine works more and more, the hospitalizations and deaths start coming down significantly month to month, where we start breathing more and more a sigh of relief. And hopefully by, again, the end of 2021, we're back to somewhere normal.
You know, we're talking about all of these bright spots, but I have to keep it real. We don't have that vaccine just yet. But what I do want to ask you about is we've talked a lot in our webinars over the last year about an advance directive. Tell me a bit more about what that means, what it is, and do you think we should really have one right now in case we get sick?
Yeah, so an advance directive is a legal document that's typically included in a will, but gives people direction on what to do if you were to get so sick that you can't make decisions anymore. And being on the other side of that, asking family members what their family member would want is often such a difficult time for an individual, trying to not only deal with the fact that their family member is ill, but also to make decisions that really impact whether or not one will get particular therapies, one will go to the intensive care unit, or unfortunately if one would have care withdrawn on them and pass away. And so it's incredibly important that those decisions get made beforehand, that family members talk to their delegates about what they would want in those events where they were not able to talk, where they would go to the ICU, where they may live on machines and tubes for a while, and really have those discussions honestly. It's very hard to make those decisions in the moment. And so working with your family, working with your legal team to make sure that they're well documented such that, God forbid, these events do come up, people's wishes are respected, families feel like they took care of what they needed to take care of and really knew what their family member wanted. And again, that you know, the healthcare that's provided to a person really matches what their ethics and their wishes are.
A tough question to answer, definitely, but I think the reality of it, we all need to bear in mind. But, you know, I'd be remiss not to ask you this question that a lot of people have been asking me. I know I get the phone call from my grandparents. What should we be doing during Kushali, during the holidays? Any parting advice for those who are at home in isolation, basically all of us, reverting to the online world? What kind of advice do you have other than wearing a mask and using the hand sanitizer?
Yeah, I mean, I think for all of us, we really do need to think about our interactions around Kushali. You know, it is a festive time. Everyone is happy. You know, we usually get together and enjoy such an event that happens once a year. You know, gathering is going to be an issue this year. And I think we have to think about ways that we do Kushali in a way that we celebrate, we're able to support each other, whether it be virtually, whether it be in very controlled settings outdoors. But realistically, we should think about not having large gatherings, not having large meals, and really just checking in with each other to make sure that we have a way to celebrate with each other. And again, I think we need to start thinking about it now, setting up a date, setting up a time, setting up an appointment so that we make sure that our families are taken care of, and then we have that celebration together, but not necessarily having that gathering, which is going to be a significant issue going into this Khushhali, especially with what's going on across the country.
You know, I must ask you before I let you leave, if there was one piece of advice you could broadcast to the world right now, if you could give one piece of advice to everyone globally in your profession from the front line, what would you say?
It's been tough and it's unfair. And I get people are frustrated and people are upset and they want to go back to normal. They've lost a year of life experiences. Many people, lost time with their family, and I understand. But at the same time, we want to look back at this year and say, this was a blip, this was a painful year. We'll all remember it and move on. We've had pandemics in the past, and again, we've moved on from them and gone back to life as normal. And so I think we will get back to life as normal, hopefully with a vaccine on the horizon. But we want to remember this year as a blip with our family and the people we love, rather than remembering this year as the year we lost the family we loved. And so it's incredibly important we think about it now, especially going into winter, that we minimize the transmission of this disease and really protect those that are close to us.
I think the last piece of advice that I would leave the Jamaat with is just to always remember that we are moving through this together, even though we are apart. And that these are challenging and unprecedented times. And so it's important and it's okay to take time and space to focus on what we need, and to just give ourselves that compassion in recognizing that that we are navigating something challenging and uncertain, but that we are also doing that together.
Well, in the midst of chaos, in the midst of so much happening, you've taken time out for us, and I thank you very much for making that time, for educating us, and for giving us that jolt of reality that some of us may be pulling away from. Thank you so much for lending your insight and sharing a lot of good advice that I hope many of us will keep in mind. I know it's given me a little bit of glimmer of hope in the midst of all of this chaos. So once again, thank you for sharing that insight. Now, for those of you who don't know, November is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, a month that many of us have spoken about and many of us are still learning about. For many, home is, of course, a place of love, warmth, and comfort. It's the place we are right now. It's a place we're spending a lot of time. It's somewhere that you will be surrounded by care and support and a break from all of the busyness and the chaos of the world. But for many others, that's not the case. It isn't that sanctuary. And so we want you to know we are here. We are here to support you. And there is a short video we want you to take a look at for more information. And of course, after that video, with typical fashion and sticking to our traditions, that we will have a little bit of a musical ending for you. So make sure you stick around. Check out the information, check out the music, and we'll see you again here next week. Thanks for being with us.
Ya Ali Madad, isolation has been difficult for all of us, but for some of us, the home environment has been particularly stressful, leading to feelings of anxiety, hopelessness, and even fear. Does someone in your home often scream or argue violently? Do the actions of a family member leave you feeling afraid for your safety? Are you being isolated from family and friends? Is a family member controlling your access to money? Do you feel alone, helpless, or depressed? Are you being physically or emotionally abused? If you answered yes to any of these questions, know that you're not alone. Volunteers are here to help. Call the Jamaati Access Line at 1-888-536-3599. We are here 7 days a week and all calls are confidential. Again, know that you're not alone, and we're here to help. We're only a phone call away.
या मौला तू नूर है मौला या मौला जलाल है मौला या मौला मुश्किल कुशा मौला या मौला तेरा करम मौला तीनों दुनिया की बका है या अली तू हकीकत की सना है या अली इल्म भी तुझसे मिला मौला इश्क की तू इंतहा मौला या मौला तू नूर है मौला या मौला जलाल है मौला या मौला औलिया का बादशाह है या अली बेकसों का आसरा है या अली तू ही हक का सिलसिला मौला तू दवा है तू शिफा मौला या मौला मुश्किल कुशा मौला या मौला तेरा करम मौला या मौला या मौला
All I need is a little air, some for me, some for everywhere.
All I need is a little sun, some for me, some for everyone. A little bit of love, a little bit of love, a little bit of love, a little bit of love.
And all I need is some water to drink, a quiet place so I can sit and think.
And if I find me a pot of gold, I'll never forget about the rainbow. A little bit of love, a little bit of love, a little bit of love, a little bit of love. Really what I'm trying to say is I need you. And every little bit of love you give me too. volunteers.
Thank you. Everything will be alright.
You taught me love, you taught me kindness, kindness. The kind that brings us light from darkness, darkness. Made us a family, nothing else I'd rather be. Gave me a home, gave me a start. Learned to heal with my heart. There are days where I wonder if there was no one to do what you do. Who would hold up the corners of a smile and better a life? Imagine what could change if we all do the same.
We can show our love. We can ignite a spark. We stand stronger as one. Together we can heal a heart. A smile is all it takes, and a hand to hold. Help someone today, bring another home. Here every day to brighten our soul. Love so close when we share our home.
There are days where I wonder if there was no one to do what you do. Who would hold up the corners of a smile and better a life? Imagine what could change if we all do the same.
We can show our love. We can ignite a spark. We stand stronger as one. Together we can heal a heart. Heal a heart. Ignite a spark. Stand as one. I love, show our love, we're one, as one. We can show our love. We can ignite a spark. We stand stronger as one. Together we can heal a heart. We can show our love. We can ignite a spark. We stand stronger as one. Together we can heal a heart.
We love you so much.
Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for your kindness.
مهربانی و تلاش شما بی‌نظیر است. Thank you health workers.
We are proud of our all brothers and sisters. Thank you. Thank you.
Obrigado.
Asante sana to all the volunteers.
Thank you.
First responders and community helpers for all your hard work and effort. Stay safe.
E além disso, obrigado a todos, médicos, enfermeiros, voluntários, que estão dia e noite a cuidar da nossa saúde. E a todos, fiquem em casa, fiquem seguros, fiquem bem.
Stay home, stay safe. We are one remote.
Stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you.
I have your favorite masala chai ready for you.
Take care, be happy, and Ya Ali Madad.